Oh my goodness, you guys, this episode, you get to meet Andy Dorantes, who is the youngest Latin American woman to ever climb and summit Mount Everest. She's climbed all 7 summits, which are the 7 highest peaks in 7 continents. Yet you'll be surprised, that's not what we talk about in this episode. She has so many new adventures and interests she's pursuing. She just wrote a children's book. She's moving on to biking and plans to bike across Europe this summer. And one of the gifts of this episode is the inspiration that it's okay to have a lot of things that you are interested in and to switch. She's been speaking to college students and spreading that message and inspiration that if you major in one thing, that doesn't mean you have to do it for the rest of your life. Or if you're in one job, you can switch. I hope this podcast contributes to you. Her message is so inspiring, and I'm honored to get to share it with the world. Enjoy. Welcome to the Shift Your Vibe to Thrive podcast. My name is Emily Evans Russell, and I'm a single mom, multiple 6-figure business owner, and master mindset and energy coach. I created this podcast with 2 main targets. One, to give you practical tools so that no matter where you are in your life right now, you not only know that things can shift, but you know how to make them greater. And 2, to change your frequency so that you become an energetic match for everything you desire. I'm talking your relationships, your finances, your success, all of it. Think of this podcast as your weekly energetic upgrade with a mix of subconscious mind hacks, ways to quantum leap, and consciousness shifts. A place where you learn to sculpt your reality and actually finally truly have the magical life you deserve and one that works for uniquely you. Are you ready to uplevel your reality? I think I hear yes, so sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride. Thank you so much for being here. And now let's go to the show. I get the honor of talking with you today, Andy, and there are so many things that I know about you that are phenomenal and so many things I don't know, which I'm excited for everyone listening to learn. But how would you even introduce yourself?
That's okay. I didn't know this podcast was going to be that hard. No, I'm kidding. I think I would introduce myself now as an adventurer. Is that a word in English?
Yeah, totally is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm an adventurer, just trying to do as many different things as possible to push my limits and see what is truly possible for me.
Were you
Just
always
exploring.
I love that because that's really encapsulates a whole lot, like your adventure. And were you always like that as a kid?
I think now I'm more, but now that I look back and see where I was growing up and I was always different than my friends. So maybe it was in me, but I was not like using it 100%.
Yeah. So where did you grow up? Like, what was your life like as a kid? And I know you're from Mexico and you ended up going to college in the States, but talk a little bit about like kind of how you grew up and how you ended up taking that path.
Yeah. So I grew up in Leon. It's a city in the middle of Mexico. It's not very touristy. I grew up here. My whole family is from here. My grandparents, my cousins, everyone lives here. And it was a pretty normal life. I would go to school. I would play soccer in the afternoon, go to bed, and then repeat the same thing all over again. And growing up, I was pretty happy. I was always like getting in trouble for being too intense and doing different things. But my dream was to get a professional career in soccer, so that's what I pursued, and that's how I ended up going to the US, getting a soccer scholarship.
And where did you go to school? And so that was your dream to play professionally. And then where did you end up with that? What sort of
So
showed up?
you're gonna laugh. I ended up in the middle of nowhere in the Midwest. I was so surprised when I arrived to the Midwest. I felt like I was going back 100 years. It was so different. For me, the US was more like I was expecting everything to be like California or New York. And when I landed in the Midwest, I'm like, where am I? But I went to a small school, a private school called McKendree University, and it's in Lebanon, Illinois. So really close to St. Louis. And I was just surrounded by cornfields. And I was like, there's not much going on here for me. So I was like, I need to get out of the Midwest. And that's how I ended up transferring to Boise State in Idaho. But most people in the Midwest told me, like, why are you going to Idaho? They just have potatoes there. Like, it's so random that you want to go there. But for me, it's been like one of the best decisions of my life.
I love that. I love that people in Illinois surrounded by corn are making fun of you to go be surrounded by potatoes because Idaho
Yeah,
is incredibly gorgeous. So you get
yeah.
to Idaho, and then what happened?
So I got to Idaho because I wanted to ski, and I started working for the outdoor program at the university, and that's where all these new possibilities started showing up for me. So I got certified to be a raft guide. I became a ski instructor. I was doing mountain biking, trail running, like all these different activities that I didn't even know I liked, but they were just there. I was like, oh my God, I love this. So from there, my whole life changed. So I would not be where I am today if it hadn't been because I transferred from the Midwest to Idaho.
Because it's like an outdoor wonderland. Like there's so much
Yeah,
to do out there. So
it's such a
then
cool place.
you're out there at that point. Do you know then, okay, my target anymore is not to play professional soccer? And then did you climb your first mountain there or what happened then?
No, so I graduated from Boise State, and the expectation was for me to go to New York and get like a real job and work 9 to 5. But I was like, no, I'm not about that life yet. I'm too young to get into the corporate world. So I went to Canada and worked there as a raft guide. And at this point, I hadn't climbed any big mountains. And then when I was in Canada, I started saving up all my money so that I could go backpacking in Europe. So I was in Europe for like almost 3 months, and it was a really cool experience because I didn't plan this, but this is how it ended up being. But I didn't pay for one single night of accommodation. So that's pretty impressive, I think.
What? How did that just by meeting people and having things show up?
Yeah, so I had my backpack, I had a tent, and the first days I was in London and I stayed with a friend. And then from there I flew to Norway, and that's where I started like all the adventures. But it was late September, so I didn't know it was bad time to go to Norway. And there were really big storms. So there was one day that I got caught in a storm, so I couldn't get back to my tent, and I ended up staying with a random guy that I met on the street, and he let me stay at his place. And then I went on couch surfing. I don't even know if the app works anymore, but you can stay with local people. And I saw an ad that said that a guy was going from Norway to Denmark out on a sailboat. And I'm like, oh, that sounds like a good adventure. So I think I'm going to do it. And I messaged the guy and I asked him, when are you leaving? And he said, I leave tomorrow at 5 a.m. in the morning. So if you want to go, you need to get all your stuff ready and go to this, and we can meet in this town. But I'm like, oh my God, like my backpack, my tent, everything is up in the mountain. I don't even know if I can go get it. I don't even know if it's going to be there, or the storm just blew it. So it was still raining pretty hard. And I was like, okay, I need to go get my stuff. So I climbed that mountain where I was staying, and I found my tent like stuck in between like two trees, so it didn't really blow away. I'm like, oh my God, I'm glad I didn't lose it because my passport was there, everything was there. So I packed everything. I was so happy. And then I hitchhiked to the other town to meet this guy, and then we started sailing. But the first day we were sailing, it was like 5 a.m. In the morning. He gave me like all the gear, and we would take turns. So it was like 2 hours him and then 2 hours me that we would be in charge of the boat. But then we stopped in the middle of the ocean to get diesel. I think that's what they put on boats or something.
Yeah, yeah.
But the point is that he tries to turn on the boat and the engine doesn't work. So we're so we're
What?
stuck. We're stuck in the middle of the ocean, and there is no wind because we started sailing so that we wouldn't get caught in the storm because the winds were pretty high. We were 2 hours just waiting in the ocean. We couldn't move. And then, boom, it was too late at night and the storm started. So we started moving, like we were going so fast. And he's like, okay, the next town is, I can't remember, but it was like 30 minutes away from here. He's like, we need to stop in that town. If not, we cannot spend the night in the middle of the ocean with these conditions. There were like these huge waves. I had to clip myself to the boat, and everything was moving. Like everything inside the boat was just like crashing. And then we finally made it to the town where we were going to stop. And he's like, okay, hold on, because we need to crash against the what is it called? The port or something?
Yeah, like the dock at the port or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the dock. Yeah. So he's like, hold on, we need to crash. So we crashed on the dock, and there were like some buildings in there. So everyone heard us, like the crash. But if we were in Norway, it's one of the safest countries in the world. So in less than 5 minutes, there were the firefighters, the police officers. They even had like people go in the water and do all these crazy things. And they were asking me for the boat information and all this. I didn't even know what the guy's name was. I had just met him a few hours ago.
Like, I just jumped on the boat. I don't know.
And they were so confused, like, why is there a Mexican in the middle of Norway sailing with a random guy going to Denmark? Like, none of that made sense, but it was a crazy experience. And then the next day, I think it took 2 days to fix the boat, but then we ended up making it to Denmark. So that was one of the crazy stories that I had while I was in Europe.
I have to sense that you have a bazillion crazy stories because I had never even heard that. I love it. So, does that encapsulate sort of the energy of that trip?
Yeah, it was always like, for me, it's so exciting waking up and having no idea where I'm going to sleep, who I'm going to meet, and what's going to show up. So I love having no plans, no return ticket, because that really gives you the freedom to do what you want to do when you want to do it. I've had a lot of fun. But I told you this story because you asked me when I climbed my first mountain. Then COVID hit. So I think I was in the US when COVID hit, and I had to go back to Mexico because that's when all the countries started to shut down. And I'm like, what am I going to do now? Oh, it's going to be so boring to be in Mexico because I hadn't been home in so long. And that's when I met some friends and they invited me to climb Pico de Orizaba. And I didn't even know what Pico de Orizaba was or where it was, how tall it was. So for me, it was easy to say, yeah, I'll just go for the adventure. I've never climbed a mountain, but it seems like a pretty cool adventure. I'll go. And I didn't know how to use the equipment or anything. And I remember we arrived to Tlachichuca, is the closest town to Pico de Orizaba. And I remember looking up and seeing that huge monster. I'm like, whoa, there is no way I'm gonna climb that thing. But I was like, okay, I'm already here. I'm just gonna give it a shot and see what shows up. And climbing the mountain, it was the first time that I felt something in my body that I was like, oh my God, what is this? I felt so alive. I felt like connected to nature. I felt so grateful to be alive. So it was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And when I reached the top and I saw the sunrise, it was like, whoa, everything was just amazing. And from that point, I was like, oh my God, if this is what you see in the highest point in Mexico, I cannot imagine what it looks like to climb Everest, to be on top of the world. But I didn't tell anyone because I thought it was pretty crazy to climb one mountain and then think about Everest. So
It's
I did it
definitely
anyway.
different. And you know what I love in just like these few stories and conversation that we've had is I feel like so many of us have these moments where we look back and like when you said something changed in your body when you just felt so alive climbing that mountain. And then you also mentioned when you got to Idaho from the cornfields of, of Illinois, how different that was. And these different parts of us that maybe we didn't know were there when we were little and they kind of get awakened again, or for the first time traveling in Europe, getting crashed into the dock. I know the first time I went, before we started recording, we were talking about Baja, Mexico. And when I was in college, I hadn't really traveled at much at all in my life. I had just gone to college in the same state I was born in. And I went on a winter term where we had like the month off of January. You could go anywhere. And we found some alumni who was studying sea turtles in Baja. And I was like, that sounds awesome. And you just sort of camp for the month on the beach and study sea turtles. I had no idea what it was going to be like. And that trip, I had that same sense of everything in my world changed. I was like, whatever this is, and this joy and the sense of like every day you don't know what's going to happen and you're just excited for the adventure. And after that, I became a complete travel junkie. I was like, where else can I go and what else can I see? And before that, I didn't even totally know that was inside of me. I loved novel things and excitement and being outdoors, but not to that level. So I just love that you're kind of mentioning these moments of really just new ahas when we experience new things and they light up something inside of us.
Yeah. Before I used to blame myself for like, okay, I need to stick to one thing. If I'm gonna do soccer, then I have to do it to the highest level and only focus on one thing. But now that I've seen how my life is showing up and how if you do different things that you didn't even know you might like, it's like it gives you a completely different perspective. And now for me it's more like from this space, like I just want to explore as many things as possible because I don't want to limit myself, like what's truly inside of me.
I want to highlight that to anyone listening who might be the same way. I was very similar where I saw friends who could pick one thing and do it for their whole life and have it excite them. And I felt so wrong because I was like, but I keep wanting to switch and I'm now excited about this and about this. There are people that we're just wired differently, and some people that really works for. And others of us, you're not wrong if you have a new thing you want to follow and explore all the time.
Yeah, and I think we should really talk about this because like I finished climbing the seven summits and people keep asking me like, for example, what's the next mountain you're going to climb? And I was like, no, I'm done with mountains. I don't want to climb mountains anymore. And I don't see it as wrong anymore. It's like it's not fun for me. Now, what is fun for me? So now I love biking. That's like my new obsession. I love biking and buying bikes and doing this. And I'm like, the next adventure is going to be a bikepacking trip. So it's like you gotta keep it interesting.
I love that. That's so funny because before we had this interview, I knew there, I wanted to ask you, I was like, okay. And just for you all listening, Andy just threw in when you say you climbed the seven summits, those are the seven highest mountains in the world, including Everest.
No, it's the highest mountain in every continent.
Okay. In every,
But yeah, it does include Everest.
and so I love how we just sort of passed over that. But I knew, like, I've talked to you about that particular climb before and the story. And I knew before getting on with you, I wanted to ask you, I was like, so what's next? And I saw these photos of you in the fall, I think, when you were biking in Europe. So what do you see as this next? Like, how old are you now?
I'm 27.
27. And so you got sponsored for climbing.
I got sponsored. Yeah.
And now, like, so looking forward, what are you looking to create? So now you're really into biking. Is it something that you can use sponsorships for? I mean, how are you looking to what's next for Andy?
Okay, so I have two things that really get me excited, and one of them is I'm writing a children's book, and it's almost finished. I'm waiting just to print it out and try to get it to as many bookshops as possible, have it launch in many countries. It's about my adventures in the mountains, but it's for kids. So it's like it's funny, the pictures are great. So I'm really excited about that project. And that's how I feel like, okay, I already did this amazing thing, but I want to inspire more kids to have big dreams because I feel like with children, you can still inspire them to dream big because adults sometimes they limit themselves too much. So that's why I want to reach as many kids as possible. So that project, I'm really excited about it and to see where it goes because I think there are many possibilities out there for that one.
I
And
love
the other
that
one,
so much. But when I know when we probably release this, it won't be ready yet, but I would love to link to it in the show notes so that when people find this episode later, we can link
yeah,
to that when that's out in the world. That's so beautiful.
yeah, that would be great. And I started doing the book because I honestly I don't remember how I got the idea, but one day I was like, okay, I'm gonna write a children's book, and it's just amazing when you choose something how the right people just start showing up. So I saw a random message on Instagram, and it was a bookshop that they were really like what I did on Everest. So I asked them, hey, do you guys know how it works to publish a children's book? Because honestly, I had no idea what the steps would be like or what I had to do. And they sent me the contact of this person. And this person actually has a company that helps you write your children's book. So it was just so easy. So I talked to them, and now it's like we're in the last part just to get it published. And I'm going to have it so far, I'm going to have it in Spanish and English. And then from there, hopefully translated to other languages. But I was not like when I chose to do this project, I was not thinking of all the possibilities that can go with this. And I was like, whoa, we can go so many ways. So I'm excited to explore what I can do with this project.
Wow. I have you ever thought about like speaking to groups of kids, or have you already? Like, I bet you, do you get invited to talk about your adventures and what you've done so far?
Well, I was surprised when I came back from Everest. There were many kids that saw my videos and were like so interested in what I was doing. So I met with a few of them, with a few groups, but not like big ones. So hopefully with the book, I'm planning to visit different schools and do like different activities with them. So hopefully I can reach out to more,
Uh,
because it's crazy. The kids they just get it. It's so fun.
like you said, they get it. They don't place these limitations on, well, I probably can't do that anyway, so maybe I won't try. They're just like, yeah, that sounds so awesome. Okay. And you
Yeah.
really can inspire. Did you have someone when you were younger, or not even necessarily younger, that inspired you or inspires you currently with that kind of energy to keep dreaming bigger?
That's a good question. And they have asked me those questions before, like who inspires me? And every time they ask me, I go blank. I cannot come up with that like a single person. I think in my life there have been different persons that have influenced who I am and helped me dream bigger and do different things. But I cannot just name one person.
I so get that. Well, and also in talking to you, it seems like, let me know if this is correct, but when we have that internal, like the inspiration for being alive comes from the inside, it's like we can meet people and they can contribute to our worlds, but like that fire sort of comes from you. Like just talking to you, I get that energy, and that's such a gift because that never goes away. That's from the inside.
Well, I didn't want to say it. When you asked me like who inspires you, I didn't want to say just I inspire myself.
It's so, but how true is that? Like we can inspire ourselves. That's not weird to say.
Because for me, what really gets me going is like I truly want to see what is possible for me, because I know that we limit ourselves so much. So, like you said, it's like there is this fire inside of us that just want to go out there and see how far we can go. And for me, that's what keeps me going.
Yeah. Okay, so I interrupted you after you talked about the children's book, which I can't wait until that's in the world. And then
Yeah, it's funny.
and then there's a second thing. What's that?
Oh, so the second thing that I'm planning, because like I mentioned now, my new obsession is to ride bikes.
Yeah.
So I figure I should come up with a school project. It's going to be to bike across Europe. So from the northern part of Norway all the way to Portugal, to the tip of Portugal. So it takes about 100 days, 120 days. So now I've never done a bikepacking trip. I don't know what the logistics are going to be like, but once it's in my head, it's going to be hard to get it out. So I'm hoping to do that this summer.
I love it. So how, when you go on these adventures, like you said, some of the kids found your videos, how can people find you and kind of what you're exploring next and go on this adventure with you?
So I'm on social media. I'm at Andy Dorantes MX, and my website is still being built, but hopefully I can. It's gonna be ready in a couple weeks. So that's gonna be andydorantes.com. Nice and simple. So I think it's my social media is gonna be the easiest way to follow what I'm doing.
Yeah. Okay, this is in biking, this is what I want to know. I cannot bike for long periods of time without my ass hurting so bad after a couple hours. What do you do with that? How do you do that and not and keep going? And then then once it gets sore, then you go back to get on the bike. And is there a workaround to this, or what is that?
Well, to be honest, that's a good question because I haven't done like long trips. So I guess I'll figure it out and I'll let you know.
Okay, good. I think there's some sort of there's got to be a trick or some sort of
Yeah,
invention that could be made.
it could be. Yeah. I mean, if you wear those special shorts, that definitely helps. But
Yes.
I'll be an expert by the end of the trip. I'll let you know.
You will be 100 days. You're going to have this figured out. I'm
Yeah, I
sure.
hope so.
I hope so too. I love this bit about inspiring ourselves. Are there, in the adventures of what you've chosen, I mean, you're the youngest woman ever from Latin America, right, to summit Mount Everest?
Yeah.
And that's just one of these many feats that you've accomplished. What advice would you give to someone, whether it's a child or an adult, who maybe has something they've dreamed of doing, or maybe they've even, it's out of their head at this point, but they're like, there's something in this, I would like to explore something new. What advice would you give somebody, or what has helped you as you kind of walked this adventure?
For me, what it really helps is to have clarity on what I want to do. So just choose something, whatever it is. It doesn't matter how crazy it is. It doesn't matter if no one believes in you. As long as it's in your heart, like if you believe in yourself, you can do it. And sometimes we stop and we don't accomplish those things because we feel like we need to know exactly what it's going to look like or what each step is going to be like. And for me, climbing the 7 summits, it was just like, okay, I want to do the 7 summits. I didn't know how long it would take, but I said, I want to do it in less than 2 years because if I don't put a deadline, then I'm going to be 80 years old and maybe I'm not going to finish it. So just be clear. And then it doesn't matter if you don't know anything in between, like if you don't know how you're going to do it, how much it's going to cost, or you don't know anyone that has done it. So it's just like, as long as you have what you're going to do and take the first step, then you're all set because it only takes one step to then take another step. But sometimes we don't even take the first one to find out what's really out there for us. So my advice would be like, dream big, be clear on what you want to do. It doesn't matter how crazy it is, and just take one step. That's it. Just take one.
And isn't that so, like your story of the children's book is such a good example of that? Well, I know I want to write this. And then the pieces, the next steps really do show up when you have that clear vision and big dream that you're like, I'm going for that. And we allow that to pull us. Isn't it? It's like almost like stair steps that get placed in front of you one at a time. And you don't know, you just have to trust that there's going to be more,
Yeah.
more put on the
But
staircase for you.
yeah, I love how you put it out there, but sometimes we don't even see the steps because we don't take the first one. And
Yep.
I think that happens to a lot of people. They're not willing to take the first one, and since if you don't take the first one, then you don't know how many steps are in between.
Do you have doubt that comes up? Because I know a lot of people would say, well, they don't take the first step, or maybe they've taken a few and then back off. Do you deal with doubt? Like, does that come up in your world, or how do you handle that?
I think for me, it's more as long as I'm having fun, then I'm going to keep going. If it gets boring, then I'm done.
I love that.
Yeah.
So you
But
don't
of course,
actually experience the doubt. If you're having fun, you're like, I know I'm going to keep moving and going in the direction where I'm clear I'd like to go.
I think, yeah, because most of the time it's up to us if we're going to do it or not. So if I'm clear that I'm going to do it, then I'm going to do it. If I'm not clear that I'm not going to do it, then I'm not going to do it. I wouldn't say that I struggle with doubt because, like I told you before, if it's in my head, then it's happening. It doesn't matter what it looks like, or it doesn't matter how long it's going to take. It doesn't matter if I fail, I don't know how many times. If I still want to do it because it's fun, then one day I'll do it.
I love that so much. And it shows how powerful we actually are. If we really go have something in our heart and ask for that and we know we're going, there really isn't anything that can stop us. Man, can we make things difficult?
I mean, of course, sometimes it's not going to be fun and sometimes it's going to get hard, but in those situations, it's going back inside and just really asking yourself, like, why are you doing it? Because the purpose is always going to be bigger than that whatever is in front of you.
What is your, if you had to answer that, what is your big why? Like when you've had challenging moments, whether it be climbing a mountain or on a bike or in a sailboat in the middle of the ocean, what's your bigger why? I don't know if it's always cognitive, but if you look at that, what is what pulls you through times that are more difficult or challenging?
I think my why would be just seeing how far I can go. Because it's always easier just to say, like, oh no, I can't do it anymore. But going through that gap of, like, I know I can go farther. I know I can push my limits. I know I can accomplish this, is like, that's what gets me going.
Yeah. Do you have a different perspective on, like, with that? A lot of what you do, because it's so physical, involves your body and pushing limits with what the body can do.
Mhm.
Like you had a lot of some of your oxygen stolen. right before you're about to summit Everest. How do you look at what the human body is capable of? Because I'm guessing you have a pretty different perspective than most people.
Well, the human body is just amazing. I don't think we use all the capacities it has. Like I feel like we're just exploring like maybe 2% of what is truly possible for our body. So that's also exciting for me as well, just to see what they can do. Like, these bodies are just amazing. Like just think about everything that is going inside your body right now. Like, all the systems, it's just mind blowing. So for me, it's just exploring as well, just like to see what my body can do because I'm not using it to its fullest capacity.
Well, I'm excited to keep following you and see where you go next. You and your body and all your adventures, whether it's biking and then whatever comes next after that. I will be following you on Instagram and eagerly awaiting your book and, and website. I just wanted to say thank you for such a refreshing conversation. I love just your energy, your outlook, and this ability to keep looking to what's next and just going for it.
Thank you for inviting me. I was really excited about this, and it's always fun to share my experience. And if we can inspire someone, then we're all good to go.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And if you guys listening, if this inspired you or a kid in your life, that might desire to hear this, please share it. And then I'll make sure to share Andy's Instagram and then her book link when it's ready in the show notes. Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope you got something out of that episode. If you like this podcast, please share it with someone you know who'd find it useful or interesting, and subscribe so that you can listen to past and upcoming shows.